Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today's video is actually going to be in a bit of a different style. So, if you read the comment on my last video, you might know that I went to summer camp for about a week, and it was actually a camp my church set up, which basically meant it was a normal summer camp, but with a church service every now and then. I bring this up because it makes the things you're going to hear about in this video a lot more wild. Also, this is going to be a post-commentary if you couldn't tell that already. I thought about trying to tell my stories while playing, but there's just so much to go over, and my attention span would not be enough to handle it, so we're doing it like this. Anyway, without much further ado, I present to you my summer camp experience. Our first story begins about 0 seconds into the trip, meaning that we hadn't even moved anywhere on the buses and things were already going bad. Basically, we got this sick double-decker bus that we were going to ride to the camp, so me, my brother, and our friend that we brought with us to camp were all super hyped about it. But I wouldn't be telling this story if everything went great, now would I? So, to make a long story short, the bus's AC was broken, and this wouldn't have been a problem in any other season, but since it's summer, you can probably tell how that 4-hour trip went. I cannot describe to you the discomfort I experienced covered in my sweat the entire trip. But this wasn't the only bad thing that this bus ride had in store for us. So obviously, when you have a bus of about 50 high school kids that doesn't have AC, said bus is bound to become very humid, and this can lead to various problems, one of which will be highlighted shortly. We were about an hour or two into the trip, and I'm about to doze off for a nap when my friend calls my name. I look over at him to see his nose bleeding very rapidly with a little blood lake forming in his hand. Even just saying that makes me feel sick. So obviously, I'm panicking because I don't have any paper towels and we're in the middle of nowhere, so what am I supposed to do? Eventually, after a minute of hesitation, I got out of my seat to go down to the bottom floor of the bus to start looking for something to help him with his bloody nose. I luckily happened to find some paper towels at the bottom section, so I made my way back up to bring them to him. Once I finally get back up there, I'm met with the sight of my friend still collecting blood in his hands, with it also soaking his pants and face. So needless to say, he wasn't having a good time. Eventually, after a couple more trips of awkwardly stepping over people's legs to get more paper towels, I don't know why I just didn't grab the whole roll, his nose stops bleeding and we can finally chill. But the poor guy had to go the rest of the ride covered in blood. I still feel bad for him. Once we got to camp after about 5 hours, because our bus broke down for a few minutes somewhere along the way, we wanted to get our stuff to our room to go do something more fun than being in a sweaty bus. So we go find the room labeled on our name tags and, some people's stuff was already in there, but there was no one around to show for it, so we were a bit confused. But we just set our stuff down and went on with our day. Fast forward to about 10 o'clock that night, and we're going back to our room to get a shower and get to bed. As we are about to head onto our room, someone getting into their car stops us. He says, "Hey, that's not your room." So at this point, we are immediately confused. We talk with the guy for a few minutes, and then we go find our leader to ask him what's up. When we find him, he tells us to go put our stuff from that room into his. So we go back down there, and as we're grabbing our stuff, a car pulls up, and 3 dudes jump out of it and walk into the room. "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Uh-oh. Turns out this was the church band's room, and from their perspective, it looked like we were trying to steal stuff from them. But my brother explained the situation to them, and luckily they were cool about it, but that was too close. Fast forward about 15 minutes, and our leader finds us and tells us that there was a mistake, and he told us our actual rooms, and luckily, our new cabin members were pretty chill, but oh boy, that was an experience. One of the unfortunate things about our cabins, and really all the cabins around the camp, was there was no AC. Not something I exactly wanted to hear after being on that bus all day, but okay. All we had to keep us cool was a tiny little fan that we set on the floor, so obviously that thing was on full blast to keep us semi-cool at night. Eventually, I woke up to the door of our cabin opening in the middle of the night, but for some reason I didn't care, so I just went to sleep for about 20 minutes, and when I woke up again, I didn't hear the fan, and trust me, that thing was loud enough so I would have heard it. When I woke up the next morning, I came to find out that it had been stolen in the middle of the night. How does that even happen? The funny thing was, our cabin mates had warned us that had already happened to them that day, so not surprisingly it happened again. And the dude who stole it ratted himself out the next day, so I guess that was cool, but still, we had to up our guard for the next night. Skipping on over to the second night we were there, I had fallen asleep because I was extremely tired from what we had done that day. But then all of a sudden in the middle of the night, I heard screaming from somewhere, and trust me, That is about the last thing you want to hear when you're asleep in the middle of the woods. Only a few people in the dorm reacted too, and they didn't even seem scared, but I sure was. I hardly got a wink of sleep that whole night because I had no clue what that was, and I was shook. Fast forward to the morning, and I roll over to hear my cabin members laughing, and one of them telling a story. Apparently, that roommate had woken up to see some sort of shadow demon in our room, super tall and dark, and he got scared because it was so real to him that he just jumped from the top bunk, screaming at the top of his lungs, and booked it out the door. When I woke up in the morning and heard that story, I thought it was pretty funny, but that night I sure didn't. Now, as we all know, when you have a video of someone telling stories of something in their life, they're way more entertaining when something bad happens, but I think it's okay to talk about some of the good things that happened at summer camp too. So, as you know by now, our cabins, which we were in a section called Western Town, which is just hilarious, were not that great. In fact, they were probably the worst of all the sets of cabins in the whole camp. But that happened to work out in our favor, because I guess one of the leaders felt bad for us, so they asked the people in our group what snacks and drinks we would want, and the dude actually went out to the store and bought them for the whole of Western Town. Now, I don't care what anyone says, that guy was the real MVP, and you'll see that in a later story too. But once we caught wind of where the snacks were, we went down there and we stuffed our bags full of them. And we had first dibs, so we got all the good stuff. Another legend we got to witness was this guy named Tommy. He's one of the main pastors for our main church, so at one of the services, he got up there and gave a great message, but that wasn't the only cool thing he did. At this specific camp, 2 of the nights you have there are themes, and this year's being Jersey Night and Glow Night. Jersey Night was nothing special, just wear a team jersey, and they didn't even do anything special for it, but Glow Night was crazy. They have it every year, so obviously it's a staple of the camp experience. Basically, after the night's service, we headed over to another building on the other side of camp, and we had glow sticks and flashing lights and basically anything that you can imagine that glows. So we were all having a good time, music playing really loud, people chanting and going crazy, getting really hyped when all of a sudden the DJ says he's bringing out a special guest, and that special guest was none other than our boy Tommy. And he did what anyone would do when hundreds of high school students are cheering their name. He started rapping, and man, he was spitting fire. The only complaint I had about it was that it went on for a bit too long, but it was a completely original rap he had written himself in 2017, and by the end of it, everyone was going insane, but unfortunately, that insane energy was about to be quickly shut down by something that was just about to happen. A couple of minutes after Tommy finished his rap, one of the announcers came onto the mic and told us that it was over and we had to go back to our cabins, and he told us specifically to stay on the roads. So we all left a bit disappointed that it was over so soon, but it was alright since it was past midnight at that point and we were all tired and we just wanted to get some showers and get to bed. Once my group got back to our dorm, another friend we had there was sitting out on the porch of the cabin and he said something that sent chills up my spine. Hey, did you guys see the bear? The what? We all started yelling, and then we fled into our cabins and hung out there for the rest of the night, but by morning, it seemed like everything had been dealt with, but the story doesn't end there, because the next night, they had been handing out ice cream to all the campers after the night session, but me, my brother, and my friends didn't want any, so we just went back to our dorms. We hung out there for about 10 minutes once we got there when we heard a knock on the door. The guy who had gotten snacks for the whole Western Town had shown up, and he didn't look too happy. He told us that we shouldn't have left our group and we had to get back to them immediately. So us, a little embarrassed, got our shoes back on and went and found our group. And, of course, once we found them, they were already heading back to the cabins. Very convenient, so we just started walking back with them. As we were closing in on them, the guy who called us out, now in his car, told us some pretty bad news. Hey, you guys better start heading back because there's been a bear spotted down there. And he pointed straight back to our cabin. So us, being the brave adults that we were, all started running away as quickly as possible. We camped out on the main field for a bit, but we tried to go back to our cabins and block up there after a little while, and it legit felt like a horror game going back down to our rooms. We all had our flashlights, we were huddled up in a group, and we were moving really slowly, and we were all terrified of any noise we heard at all. Luckily, we made it back to our dorms with no incidents, and we didn't even see the bear at all, but I was still kind of scared to go to sleep, knowing a bear, with its cub by the way, might be roaming just outside. But eventually my tiredness outweighed my fear, and I drifted off to sleep. Alright, so this next story is probably one of the scariest things I've ever experienced, so if you don't like that kind of stuff, you've been warned. For some context, the camp had given us 2 wristbands to wear. One of them told us which table we would sit at during all the meals at the dining hall, and the other one told us what group we were in at the camp. But once I got home from camp and took off the wristbands, it still felt like they were there when I wasn't paying attention. What, did you think I'd actually seen a ghost or something? You think my life is that insane? No, not really, but fun fact, as of recording this, it still feels like it's on my wrist, so that's pretty weird. And boom, those are all the crazy stories from my summer camp this year. This was definitely one of the more memorable trips out of the few times I've gone before, and I'm sure I'll remember this one for a while. I really do hope you liked this video, and if you want to see more in this style, tell me in the comments. Anyway, click on this video right here if you want to see some very epic gameplay. Subscribe today to become one of the boys, and as always, keep being epic.